Hello, my name is Jordan or Jordana Cipriano. This is my Chapter 3 Big Ideas audio assignment for Psychology F111X. This will be covering Chapter 3, which is biopsychology. It includes two sections. Topic 1 is the brain and the nervous system, and Topic 2 is hormones and behavior. So, without further ado, my first big idea. The brain is specialized and organized into different regions that control different functions. So, the reason I chose this big idea, well, first and foremost, both topics of chapter 3 cover the brain being one of the most complex parts of the human body. It is the center of consciousness. It also controls all voluntary and involuntary bodily functions. It communicates with each part of the body through the nervous system, a network of channels that carry electrochemical signals, as cited from the first topic of the textbook. The brain isn't just one big lump that does everything. It's like divided into parts such as the brainstem, cerebellum, or the four cerebral lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Obviously, each of these divided sections of the brain serve a different purpose. So, like for example, the occipital lobe is for vision. The temporal lobe helps with hearing and memory. The parietal lobe processes touch and spatial awareness. The frontal lobe, which doesn't fully develop until supposedly 25, um, handles planning, decision making, and movement. And that's why, kind of as we learn through the reading, it's important to note that the brain isn't just one big lump because any kind of damage to one area of the brain can lead to very specific problems. So, if you have damage to your frontal lobe, that would damage, of course, planning, decision making, and movement, and so on and so forth. So, in terms of personal application, for me, um, well, first and foremost, it's super interesting. I'll just say that. But also, it matters to me because it helps me kind of understand my own behaviors, thoughts, and perhaps even obstacles or challenges that are tied to specific parts of my brain. So, for example, if I'm staying up studying for a hypothetical intermediate college algebra course at 2 a.m., which I would never do, but hypothetically, right? If I'm getting tired and have trouble concentrating, I can remind myself that my brain is a physical organ that needs rest and fuel to work at its best. And the best fuel for such is, of course, Monster Energy drink, but I digress. The information, this awareness can make me more intentional about my sleep and study habits, to put it bluntly. Now, for big idea number 2, I chose hormones act as chemical messages that influence behavior, and their effects are gradual but impactful. So, unlike the neurotransmitters that I briefly referenced in big idea number 1, hormones actually travel through the bloodstream and affect many cells throughout the body. They don't, their impact doesn't work instantly like neurotransmitters do, but the information shape behavior over minutes, hours, or even days. An example of a hormone would be like cortisol that helps regulate stress, or testosterone that influences aggression and motivation, and oxytocin strengthens bonding and trust. Since they work on such a wide scale, hormones link the body and brain in ways that kind of help explain shifts in mood, motivation, and social behavior. Definitely social behavior. Um, so, how would I apply this in my personal life? Well, I would find it very entertaining and funny to wrap this back around into intermediate college algebra. Ha ha ha, I know. Um, I can apply this by recognizing how my stress levels are tied to cortisol, which is probably very rampant in my body at this very moment, but I digress. When I'm preparing for like exams, I sometimes feel really nervous, really anxious, or overwhelmed. I suppose instead of beating myself up over it or criticizing myself, I can remind myself that it's a normal hormonal reaction and that it's not something that I can necessarily overcome instantly. It's something that has to be kind of managed through different methods. Like coping strategies such as exercising, deep breathing. Um, in the future, if I work with people or like under pressure, I'll be more empathetic, I suppose, in knowing their behaviors are shaped partly by hormones. Obviously, it's not an excuse for unsavory behavior, but it is definitely something to take into consideration. Now, finally, last but not least, big idea number three, both the brain and hormones reveal deep connection between biology and behavior. So, a major theme across both of the textbook chapters that we've read and your lecture notes were that our thoughts, actions, and feelings aren't just like abstract. They're tied to biological systems. There's an explanation for them. Neurons firing in the brain can create everything from language to problem solving, while hormones coordinate longer term patterns and usually more like emotional kind of responses, such as, let's see, aggression, um, bonding, anxiety, etc. Even though psychology often studies the mind, I feel like what we've learned in this chapter kind of helps us remember that the mind is rooted in the body. Because I think a lot of times we separate the body from psychology, but in reality, they're very much intertwined. Now, for personal application, well, I kind of already had a gist of how hormones and the brain kind of function. It kind of helped me further reinforce that responsibility for my own moods and behaviors can be equated to hormones and neurotransmissions within the brain. Again, not that that necessarily alleviates any kind of responsibility of the individual to act on such, but it validates one's feelings. You know, no one should ever feel invalidated because of the way they feel, especially considering we're all human and we have biological factors at play. For example, I personally feel very anxious before taking an exam. I could study for hours, write the most beautiful notes, and still sabotage myself by over overthinking a question or second guessing myself because my anxiety just runs rampant. I get all that cortisol rushing through my veins. Um, I can also connect my fear, such as my fear of college algebra. I had to tie that in one more time. Um, to the amygdala and hormones like adrenaline. Um, Obviously, none of this excuses certain feelings per se, not to invalidate them, but it helps people understand, such as myself, how to approach them more scientifically and find coping methods that are um, effective and healthy. I know biology shapes me, but I also know that I have tools to work with it. So, that being said, that concludes my Chapter 3 Big Ideas audio assignment. Thank you for listening to me rant about college algebra for 8 minutes and 13 seconds.